The MGA and the MGB are MG's most iconic models. Spanning 25 years of production, they achieved both critical acclaim and sales success. Let's celebrate these two Abingdon-built sports cars by taking them out on the road and see what they're like today. So Paul, here we are in the MGA, which I believe was a car that almost never happened, because when they pitched the development of it, it kind of got usurped by the Austin Healey 100 project.
Yeah, that was meant to be the sports car for the company. Yeah.
One thing I didn't realise was just quite what sporting provenance the MGA kind of earned, you know, in its well, perhaps before it even came out, because of the Le Mans success in '55.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the car was based on a Le Mans race. So.
Yeah, the Bonneville salt flat stuff that they did in '54. So before the car came out. So I guess I never really appreciated the sporting provenance of the MGA. I think it's a fabulous looking thing as well. That's the sort of the thing to sort of...
Someone said to me ages ago, someone quite prominent in the classic car auctions world, he said, if you didn't know anything about cars and you were asked to identify an MGA, you know, you probably would confuse it with a Ferrari from the same period. It looks that exotic.
Yeah, it's very much of its era, isn't it, as well, with that sort of curvaceous body shell.
Well, it's a competitor to the TR3 really, and hence the cutaway bodywork, and you know you needed the elbow room if you're pressing on a bit to get the wheel moving.
But like I say, that aero styling was kind of inspired by motorsport success, you know, as a lot of things were, like the Jaguar XKs of that era as well. So it really just sort of, I don't know, I think it hit the mark from very early days, wasn't it? And it just had an evolution of the TF engine that it replaced, right? It's just the sort of...
A B series.
Yeah. And then that B series engine just steadily evolved over time until it got larger and larger and gained more and more power.
Yeah, we've got a 1600 here, so it's about 80 horsepower, but that made it a 100 mile an hour car. So MG and Triumph were neck and neck at the time, and you know, 100 miles an hour was the magic figure. And of course, adding the 1600 motor allowed them to market it as a 100 mile an hour car.
And they had disc brakes by then as well, I think, didn't they? They started life
as
on drums.
Feel really quite decent. You know, for the age of the car, it's unusual. You know, you normally have to take a moment of reflection when you drive a car of this age, you know, for the first few minutes. This does feel quite modern in the braking.
Yeah, because it's got traditional rack and pinion steering. Yes. It's fairly sort of rudimentary suspension all round, but it clearly works. It's got it feels. I mean, this is a lovely example, it has to be said.
It's one of the better ones I've driven, I have to say.
But it drives, you know, it feels like it's driving beautifully.
It's really nice, actually. It's just really nicely sorted. So I always feel that the MGA is a better car of its time than the B, because the B was aged quite quickly, whereas the MGA, I always feel, well, it still feels quite modern today.
So I think although the twin cam block lived on in the later cars, some of the more elaborate bits of the engine weren't retained because it just didn't work, did it? So that was a shame. But I love how the car did just steadily evolve over time, which was encouraging.
Yeah, I'm assuming this is a Ford gearbox. See, one thing you wouldn't have in the standard car, of course, is you wouldn't have synchro on first.
Ah, yes, of course.
It makes driving so much easier, the modern gearbox. I mean, it loses a little bit of charm, doesn't it? A bit of skill, but...
Yeah, I'm quite happy to have the modern accoutrements of synchromesh, quite frankly, but anyway, yeah, it's I say, it certainly feels like it drives beautifully. And of course, while the majority of them were roadsters like this, they did have a hardtop version, because the detachable hardtop was available, and then they kind of just made that a bit more permanent in about 1956, the coupe model. But I have to say, I was never that drawn to the styling of it. It did look like an afterthought to me, the coupe model.
Yeah, it's a quiet style, isn't it? A friend of mine had one back in the day. We were quite a lot younger then, and he came round in a paddock one evening. I'm selling my MGA, can you help me shim out the door hinges? We shimmed out the door hinges with bits of old cereal packet to make the door shuts look better.
Bit of creative engineering.
Sorry,
for
whoever bought that.
Yeah. I think it also helped when it went on sale as a kind of a car to evolve from the MG TF. It went on sale for a list price of about £800, £844 I think it was, which was only 60 odd quid more than the car it replaced. So it moved the game on, and it actually wasn't that expensive.
There was a big step up from the likes of the A to the next step up was the XK120 or something like that. I mean, there wasn't much in between.
So yeah, I think this is a beautiful high point in MG's post-war history, certainly. As we all know, one of the big criticisms of the MGA was that it probably wasn't very practical for like long distance stuff.
But this is, you know, we're driving here. This urban road here. We've got speed humps. okay, we're slowing down for them, but we're not being thrown out of the car. In the TR3, you'd have been out of the seat on that speed bump. You'd have had to almost stop.
With a bone rattler.
Yeah, the MGA is that much more civilised.
But I think, in response to that feedback about it needing to be more practical, because I mean, there is a boot, but it's largely full of a spare wheel, isn't it, I think? So, you have to make allowances if you're going to go travelling. So I think a lot of them had luggage racks fitted to the boot lid.
Quite common, isn't it?
Because I was talking to the owner of this car, and he was sort of saying it just feels a bit of a point of no return. It's like drilling holes in the boot lids, like you've kind of ruined the originality. Yeah,
you have got a bit of space behind the seats, haven't you? But full of fun at the moment.
But I guess that was ultimately the inspiration for the MGB that follows, because they just wanted to make a sports car that was just a little bit more practical, a little bit more comfortable on a longer drive. So yes, that was the one that followed this in 1962. So let's head back to MG Car Club headquarters and take a little drive in the successor, shall we?
So that was the nicest MGA I've driven for years. This is as close as you're going to get to a brand new 74 MGB, isn't it?
It's
53,000 miles on it. The guy's owned it for 47 years, he's just told me.
It's absolutely glorious.
He's looked after it, hasn't he? Fair play.
And it's one of the last of the chrome bumper cars, because I think it's an October 73 build.
I feel bad for asking him if it was a chrome conversion now, given that he's owned it that long.
Yes, you
hope he doesn't hold a grudge.
Inadvertently offended him, but yeah, what an example. So of course, let's just get back to the beginning then. The MGB replaced the MGA in 1962 in roadster guise only. The GT didn't come until
much later,
65, did it? But yeah, the MGB just tried to advance the game with the MGA, and of course, crucially, it had a monocoque construction.
Yeah, so that was the big change.
That's the big difference, isn't it? Which arguably gives it that more sort of grown-up feel. But besides that, it's generally just a steady evolution mechanically. It's a steady evolution, right, of the,
it is really,
the MGA.
Yeah. That, which was, in some ways was what made the MGB old-fashioned as it aged. But you've got a lot more room in the B. You're sitting lower for a start because you haven't got the separate chassis, and you've got a bit more leg room, and you're not quite so close to the wheel.
Yeah, we immediately feel like we've got a bit more space here. Like the cabin width is bigger. There's more leg room here.
Yeah. I mean, if you've not driven an old MGB before, proportions are the same as an MX-5, aren't they? Almost identical.
Yeah. And this has got a much bigger boot than the MGA, which was one of the big bugbears. So this was definitely designed more for that kind of long distance cruising. So I think it compromised some of the MGA's pure sporting style for a bit more of a practical consideration, really. So I think to that end it had a slightly different brief, didn't it, to the MGA. Didn't have the same kind of sporting pedigree of the MGA either, but it did steadily evolve though, didn't it, over time?
Oh yeah. I mean, you forget how great these late model ones are to drive actually in comparison to the early cars. You think of the MGB as not really having changed over its lifetime, but they did evolve quite significantly. This is a sweet spot really, because it's before the raised ride height and everything.
Yeah. So when was that? So about back end of '74 is when we got the rubber bumpers to appease the US.
It was the federal crash regulations, so bumper height and deformable bumpers.
And the raised ride height meant they lost the anti-roll bar as well, the front anti-roll bar. So that sort of compromised things. I love all these sort of dials. It's definitely more modern than the MGA, but arguably it doesn't have the same charm. It's not got the painted.
It's got a
finish.
70s charm, hasn't it?
Yes, you're right. It's definitely very much of the 70s from that regard.
You do feel that little bit safer, though, don't you? You've got seatbelts. You're that much further from the dash and from the wheel,
So of course the bulk of the cars are the 1798cc, I think it is, B series engine, isn't it?
Right, yeah.
But of course they did dabble with the V8 in '73 with the GT V8, but it was quite short-lived, wasn't it, from memory? So although it was quite a well-revered car,
launched it to a petrol crisis, wasn't it? It just didn't fare well.
So it didn't last very long, unfortunately.
And never as a roadster either.
And then the MGC, of course, which had the 3-litre 6-pot, that wasn't as critically acclaimed as the MGB. The MGB, like I say, was the sweet spot.
There's that urban myth, isn't there, about the young lad sending all the press launch cars out on underinflated tyres, and the myth about understeer has just been exaggerated over the years with the C. It's really not like that. And a nicely set up C is really nice to drive.
But you can't deny that MG really sort of struck a very successful formula with the B, I think, because I think it looked good. I think it lacks the curvaceous charm of the MGA, but it does look good. The styling is very well proportioned.
Oh yeah.
And it obviously aged well because it stayed in production for such a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it drives nicely. You know, it's not intimidating to drive, is it? It's
they're user friendly, aren't they?
So it's a pity, really, because the MGB steadily evolved in the same way the MGA steadily evolved over time. But unfortunately, by the time we get to 1975, you really feel that MG's sort of fallen into the clutches of the turbulent British Leyland years. And
yeah, the quality was terrible, wasn't it? They didn't know how to replace it either. They didn't know whether they were going to replace it.
Yes, it was. You really felt that by the time you get the sort of Jubilee editions of '77, that we're kind of really in the dying days of the marque. And of course, with a nationalised company and embarrassment of riches of car brands to deal with, MG just felt like the alien car marque, which is a shame because they achieved so much success in the 50s and 60s that to see it, you know, on its knees by the late 70s, you know, short working patterns at the Abingdon factory and all that kind of stuff. It's just a real shame. So of course, production finished in 1980, and there was no sports car for 12, 13 years after that, when effectively a rebodied version of this came back with the RVA. But you can't deny the success of the MGB, because it was over 500,000 were produced, and albeit a very long time frame, 18 years.
Again, most of them went to the US, I think.
Huge quantities went overseas, so it's testimony to the MGB's enduring appeal. But the question really I've got to ask you, Paul, is which one would you have on your driveway? I mean, it's this. You would expect the newer car to be better, but actually the differences are more nuanced than that, aren't they?
Yeah. I prefer the charm of the MGA. I like the 50s cars. So and given that I can't afford an XK120, you know,
so you're going with the MGA, are you?
Yeah.
Because I've got to say, I immediately gravitated to the MGB. It's the one I perhaps remember growing up. It's the one that I think introduced me to classic cars in the first place. Love how usable they are even in today's standards, and I love how you can do so much with them. But when I was researching this, I was really impressed with the sporting provenance of the MGA, and I think it's hard not to land on the MGA because it's just I think the purest choice, probably, isn't it?
Yes.
So but I'll try and keep it fair. If you're going to go with the MGA, I will revert to my original choice of I'll take this one home to keep it fair.
Yeah.
But I don't know, there's probably a split vote with you guys at home, and I'd really be keen to hear your thoughts about which one of these two iconic MG sports cars you'd rather take home, the MGA or the MGB. So let us know in the comments which one you'd take. Maybe you'd take both, I don't know, or maybe you'd take the MGC or the midget even. But anyway, hope you've enjoyed this little trip down memory lane with the MGA and the MGB. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, and we'll see you again very soon.